Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. Welcome to my talk, Serve Them Right, Breaking the Director Misconception. And what we're going to be doing here today is we're going to be challenging common misconceptions about the director role. And by doing so, we're going to explore how a director best supports their game and their team. But before we jump into things, just quick introduction on my part. I'm Zachary Richman. I'm an associate creative director in the advertising industry. More or less what that means is my job is to come up with big ideas for different brands. So brands like Volkswagen, Airbnb, SC Johnson, etc. Come up with ideas, and then with a team, we execute and bring those ideas to life. And I found that skill set translated very nicely into game development, which led me to help build up two particular teams, Jamadoo Games and Tinker Tinker Games, both of which are within the family of Game Maker's Toolkit because they started up during the GMTK Game Jam. And I'm the director of both of these teams currently. And through these teams, I was able to become a multi-time winner of the GMTK Game Jam. I believe it was 2 games made it to the top 20, another 3 within the top 100. And yeah, it was with those teams. And these are the games that I made with those teams. So we have the Switch, Portalgeist, Two Time Towers, Maze of the Minotaur, Diamonition, and Shred Mill. You might recognize some, you might not. Either way, this is what I do. But without further ado, let's jump into things. So let's go ahead and rip that Band-Aid off right away. So let's break the big director misconception. A director should not be the idea person. We all know this type of person, this archetype. The person who wants to come into maybe a game jam or maybe just regular development. They have an idea, but they don't have any hard skills on their own. All they want to do is get a team together, make them make the idea, and they'll be on their throne being like, I like this is where this is going, or I don't like it where this is going, etc. And this is ultimately a selfish role. However, this person, while they do exist, these people do exist, they give directors a bad name because in reality, the director is anything but this role. Because a director isn't an idea person, a director is supposed to be an idea facilitator. They are a person who helps enables their team to come up with great ideas and execute in a way that leads to success. And ultimately, a real director is a selfless role because a director's real objective is not to talk down to people, but to be a servant and to serve different aspects of the process. And what that exactly looks like is a director's job is to serve 3 things. 1, serve the brainstorm. 2, serve the vision. And 3, serve the team. And these are the 3 things we're going to explore today, starting with serving the brainstorm. So what this boils down to is a director's job isn't to bring the idea. Again, that refers to that archetype of this idea person. That's not what your role is. But your role is to help your team bring out the best idea, to facilitate and enable your team to do this. But how do you do that? Well, the answer is approaching the brainstorm with intention. The brainstorm is not just this thing that happens. It's not just, oh, a game jam started. Let's start brainstorming. If you go into the brainstorm with intention and go in with a game plan, you as the director will lead your team to success. And that comes in 3 phases, starting with before the brainstorm. Right away, before anything is even started, you want to set expectations. You want to define what a good idea looks like. And this might differ from team to team. Maybe your idea of success is we want to have the best game of a game jam. We want everyone playing it, everyone talking about it. We want to be famous. Cool, nothing wrong with that. Maybe your idea of success is, I want to make a fun puzzle game with my friends, and we just want to make it an idea that we're all happy about. Cool, that's equally as valid. A game jam is not about winning all the time. Depends on how serious, depends on how you want to approach a jam. But for as a director, your job is to set what those expectations are of what a good idea is. Especially if you're building a team from the ground up. If you're finding like-minded people, you want to make sure you're talking about them about those expectations because you want to make sure everyone's on the same page. The last thing you want is to start brainstorming, and then suddenly none of you can agree on what a good idea is. That leads to conflict, that leads to people leaving the team because there wasn't a discussion ahead of time to make sure everyone's on the same page about what idea means success for you and that team. So set expectations, but another thing is to set up guidelines for the brainstorm. Maybe you want to have a bit of a process that you want to share with your team to help kind of keep the flow going throughout the brainstorm. Now, there's not like one perfect way to do that, but I can share what I do. This is just my example. With my teams, I make it so we have 20 minutes of solo brainstorming to start off. So let's say a jam theme is announced. We're like, oh, cool, the theme's this, but then we stop talking. We go do our own thing for 20 minutes. We write down some ideas. Then we regroup. We take turns sharing those ideas. And, we're jotting down the ones that are interesting. We're highlighting the ones that we really like. That might take an hour. But then we don't stop there. We continue brainstorming. And that might take who knows how long. We keep pushing through. So this is like a very basic rubric of what I do with my team. Feel free to steal it, or feel free to make up your own thing that kind of works for you, works for your ideologies, works for the people you're working with. But it's important before the brainstorming even starts to set those expectations and create those guidelines that your team can follow to lead to those expectations, to lead to success. So that's all before the brainstorm even starts. But then during the brainstorm itself, your job as director is to uphold that brainstorm. You're going to hear me say this phrase a lot during this presentation. It's this idea of being the adult in the room. Now, that's a weird phrase because everyone in the team is an adult, or I know for some game jams, it might be a young adult. So everyone is capable of being the adult in the room. But as a director, it's your responsibility to be the adult in the room every step of the way. And what that essentially means is you are there to be the pillar that people can lean on. You need to be the bedrock that keeps the team propped up through every step of the process. And in this case, during the brainstorm, you want to keep the team on track. You want to make sure people are staying, locked in and brainstorming with the team. You want to make sure people are motivated, especially if the brainstorm has been ongoing for a while. Maybe you're 3-4 hours in and you haven't cracked that idea yet. Motivation starts to dip. So who's going to keep the motivation up? Anyone on the team could do that. But if it's anyone's responsibility to do that, it's yours. You essentially want to be this pillar of optimism. And a pillar, again, that's a key word because people can lean on a pillar. Be that person that your team can lean on during the brainstorm. And finally, you want to make sure everyone's feeling included as well. During any brainstorm, there's going to be people who are really comfortable talking. And there might be some people who are more shy. And that's okay. But take note of that as the director. And, maybe ask the person who's a little shy what they think of the idea you're currently talking about. Or if they have any ideas they haven't shared yet that they want to discuss. So make sure everyone's feeling included within the process. And then getting to the end of the brainstorm, know when you're done. And again, going back to the theme, you're not done once you, the director, hear an idea that you like. It's not about what you think. It's partly about what you think, but just as much as anyone else on the team. But it's your responsibility to notice the things that get people excited during the brainstorm. Notice the things that feel unique and unexpected. Notice the things that match with your idea of success. Again, you already had those talks at the beginning, setting expectations. So what ideas that were discussed match that level of success, match what that good idea looks like for you and your team. As a director, take note of all these things. And then when it's finally time to finish that brainstorm and you feel like you guys have a few good ideas that could be the one you move forward with, you're able to act as a guiding hand, not some ultimate decider. Give your rationale on why you think a certain idea or a certain maybe top 2 or 3 ideas are the best ways forward because of those set expectations, and then discuss as a team. Be that guiding hand. And maybe there is a case where you have to be an ultimate decider if no one can agree, or maybe you're in 2 factions, half of you think one idea, half of you think the other. There are going to be moments in any part of the process where the director needs to step in and make a decision. but your objective from the get-go is not, you want to do that as little as possible. You want to be a guiding hand that helps the flow keep going and get to that natural conclusion rather than being some person that's being like my way or the highway. You never want to be that. So that's something to keep in mind at the end of the brainstorm. And then for those of you who joined I think it was 2 years ago, I had a talk here. The talk was called Finding Clever and was all about coming up with clever ideas for jam games. And I presented this exact same slide during that presentation. And I brought it back for this because I still think it's one of the most important slides I've ever put together. I encourage every director to steal this slide. Like take a screenshot, steal it, please. Even if you're not a director, this is still a super helpful tip for anybody during any brainstorming process to keep for yourself as well as share with your team. And it boils it down to 5 key things. One is you want to make a brainstorm a safe space. As a director, let your team know that this is a judgment-free zone. They can say anything, no matter if it's dumb, no matter if it's ridiculous. They can feel confident to say it because no one's going to judge them. And as long as there's no judgment, people are free to say whatever they want and keep the flow going. And that flow state is so important for any brainstorm. You want people always talking, always throwing out ideas. But they can only do it if it's a safe space. Remind your team that if the idea is dumb or obvious, to say it anyways. I think it's important to say obvious ideas. Because once an obvious idea is out in the world, they're out there. You've said the obvious thing. It allows you to now push past that and get to some less obvious stuff. Also, big fan of people saying dumb ideas. There's a trap. A lot of people think that they can only say an idea during a brainstorm if they know it's good. But dumb ideas are the best part of any brainstorm because your dumb idea might trigger something in someone else and they'll tweak something about it and suddenly it's a brilliant idea. Almost every great idea I've come up with started as a dumb idea. So please encourage your team to say the dumb, say the obvious. It will get you somewhere interesting. Don't rush the process. One of the years for GMTK, the year that we did Diminution, it took us 6 hours to get to that idea. And that was back when the jam was only 48 hours. We did a big chunk of time to come up with that idea. Motivation was down, but we kept going. We didn't rush the process. We had some half-baked ideas. We had some ideas that were okay, but we knew we didn't want to rush it. We wanted to find that golden nugget, and we found it after 6 hours. And I'm so glad we kept with it because that was one of the years we were in the top 20 because we didn't rush the process. And it's a good thing to remind your team, you're not just trying to rush out the door. You're trying to find that great idea. 4, this is a bit of an obvious one, but tackle the theme from a million angles. Remind your team of this. Jam themes are generously open to interpretation. So how does it work for different genres? How does it work with different definitions, different pronunciations even, etc.? Tackle the theme from a million different angles and remind your team of that to help keep that conversation going. And finally, as the director especially, but anyone, ask yourself if the idea is unique. Ask yourself these questions. Can I see someone else doing this idea? Will this be a common idea in the jam? Is this too easy of an idea to come up with? Now, we've talked about setting expectations of success and what a good idea is. If your definition of success for your team is we don't really care about being unique, we just want to make something fun, cool. You can ignore that part. But if your objective is to come up with great ideas that break through and get noticed, ask yourself these questions, especially as a director. Be responsible for making sure you're hitting these boxes to ensure your team and your game sees the most success. Now, bit of a shameless plug I'm going to do real quick. If you want more on that particular topic of finding clever ideas and maximizing them, I mentioned I have another talk. It's called Finding Clever. Here's a little link you could take a screenshot of if you want to check it out. But this link will also be at the end of the presentation, so no need to frantically try to get it. Yeah, just a little harmless little plug there. So that's all about serving the brainstorm. Let's talk about serving the vision. So first and foremost, let's set the tone here. What is the vision? The vision is your end goal of the big idea. It's that ultimate version of the game that's going to be out in the world once you're done. And that vision should be the reason you make every decision you make. In other words, it's your North Star. It's the thing you follow. It's the thing that sets the tone and gets the ideas moving forward. It's the thing that you follow every step of the way. But you need to have a bird's eye view of this vision, a deep, deep understanding of it. So understand these things. What is the big idea? But not just like, oh, we're making a game, blah, blah, blah. What's the big idea? What's that core mechanic that is at the heart of your game? Why does that big idea work? Why is it fun? Why are our players going to engage on it? What makes it exciting? Know what it is about your big idea, the DNA of your big idea that makes it really shine. And 3, what are those smaller complementary big ideas that your idea needs to really be the best version of itself? A game is hardly ever just one core mechanic and that's it. It's this main thing, but then these other things that help support that main thing. So what are those things? And once you have a deep understanding of these 3 aspects, you have a cohesive idea of the vision. And then you're able to use this deep understanding to guide the team and essentially make the hard decisions. Decisions serve the vision, not your preference or opinion. I'm going to say it again. Decisions serve the vision, not your preference or opinion. This is the most important sentence in this presentation. Because as a director, this is a hard thing to do. You need to take your ego and put it to the side. You're a talented dev. You have taste. You have opinions. You have preferences. But your role as a director is not to follow those. Your role is to put that all aside and ask yourself, what is the best decision to make in this situation that serves the vision, the end goal of the idea? Even if the best decision that serves the vision goes against what your typical preference is. Because being the director is not the person that pushes their preferences on others, it's the person that makes rational decisions. And because you have such a deep understanding of the vision, you're able to rationalize your decisions for your team and tell your team, hey, we're going to go this way with this direction because it achieves X, Y, Z, which complements the big idea. Suddenly you're not just saying, I like this, let's do that. You're saying, let's go with this direction because it ties back to the vision. And now your team has confidence in you as a director because your decisions aren't coming from a place of ego. They're coming from a place that makes the work better. And your team will notice that. They will see that. So it keeps them on your side, keeps them appreciating your input as the director. That said, again, there's like this invisible hierarchy going on with any team with a director where like director's up here, rest of the team down here, throw it out the window. That's kind of in the background of people's minds sometimes when they hear there's a director, but really your goal here is to find solutions as a team. Just because you're the director doesn't mean you're up here, you're the one making solutions and just telling them down here what to do. Get down on the same level, be on the same team, find a solution together. You're not the only person with solutions. Because ideally, you're surrounded by very talented devs, a full team of them. So listen first. Listen to your team, get their input, then decide. You want as much information as possible. You want to take in your team's information and then decide because they are talented too. They have solutions too. Take advantage of that. And only bring the hammer down if you have to. I will talk more about this later. There will be times where you do have to put your foot down, make a decision, even when everyone's not on the same page. Those moments will happen, but it should be a last resort. If that's your bread and butter as a director, you're not really doing the director job very well in that case. So only bring the hammer down if you absolutely need to. Again, we'll talk more about that a little bit later, but that's an important aspect when making hard decisions. And finally, to support the vision, you need to know your stuff. Don't just have thoughts, have knowledge. So have an understanding of art, music, game design, level design, UI, writing, you name it. You might already have some of that knowledge. Like maybe as a director, your background's in programming or art. So you might already have some of that, but you're not going to know it all, at least not right away. So what you don't know, delegate. Again, you're ideally surrounded by a very talented group of devs. So ask if there's an art problem, you don't know the best solution for it, ask the artist, get their input, then make your decision. Hell, maybe they'll already have the perfect solution for the problem because they just know the art so well. They know their craft so well. Then you take that moment, you learn from it, and now you're equipped for the future when something similar arises. So absorb from your team, absorb from the internet, learn as much as possible to help you best serve the vision, and not just the vision, but every aspect of the vision. You got to know your stuff. And then number 3, a director needs to serve the team. And this boils down to being reliable and available. If your team needs something, you are the one to provide it. You're there to support them. They are not there to support you. Again, going back to that hierarchy, people mistakenly believe, well, director's up here, everyone else is down here. These people are supporting the director. No, you, the director, are with everyone else supporting them every step of the way. They are the superstars. Your team is the one putting in all this hard work. Support them. If your programmer needs placeholder assets, you go grab them. You go download them. If your artist needs some emotional support because they're having a rough time during a short jam, you support them. Be that pillar for them. Be the adult in the room. Remember, to be a director is to be a servant, not to be someone barking orders. You're there to support your team and help them do everything to the best of their abilities. Because you want to be the person your team can turn to every step of the way. As a director, you need to serve the team by keeping the peace as well. Because I'm sorry, there will be conflict. It's probably one of the worst parts of the job, but it's also inevitable with any sort of group dynamic. So there will be conflict, whether it's between team members and you need to step in and kind of, again, hear both sides and maybe rationalize which one person to agree with in this moment and help push the game forward. But also, there will be conflict with people disagreeing with you. This is probably the more common one. As soon as there's any sort of dynamic where there is a sort of hierarchy going on, there will be people disagreeing with the person making decisions. That's just bound to happen. And it's okay. You learn that comes with the job and you learn to accept it. But in those moments, you also, again, want to be the adult in the room. You want to help resolve the conflict. You need to be a good listener. Because ultimately, even when people are upset because maybe their idea they're not moving forward with or their direction that they had for the game isn't being listened to, or not being listened to, but they're not moving forward with it. At the end of the day, they just feel like they're not being heard most of the time. They feel like, oh, my contributions aren't mattering right now. Oh, I'm not being listened to. My input isn't being considered. So listen, hear their side of things. On one side, you might be surprised. Maybe they'll say something that will convince you to change, to pivot a bit. You never know. But that's not the point. The point is you want to listen because then you could hear everything they're thinking and you, again, rationalize why you made the decision you made. And hopefully you guys can come to an agreement, or at the very least, they can see why you made the decision you made and they'll feel better about it. And if they don't feel better about it right away, that's also okay. That happens within any team dynamic. Sometimes people get in their feels. That's part of life. We're all human still, right? But as a director, you need to be okay with that. Sometimes people are going to be in the feels. You need to accept, hey, they're not in the best mood right now because of what happened with decision making. I'll check it on them a bit later when things have kind of de-escalated a bit. Like that's going to happen. It's hard to keep the peace. It really is hard. But something that you can do to help with that is to choose your battles. There's going to be times where a decision needs to be made and you realize that, wait, no matter which decision we make, it doesn't really impact the vision. Just to give an example, maybe there are 2 options for the background art for the game. You think it should be this one. Someone else on the team thinks it should be this one. Well, Maybe you realize as the director, hey, it doesn't actually matter which one we move forward with. Even though I know which one I prefer, neither impact the larger vision of the game. It's not going to impact the experience of the player. It doesn't matter. So, as a director, you might choose to concede. Give the win to your teammate. Now they feel great. They feel listened to. The idea that they thought was best is moving forward. You come off as agreeable, and now you have a bit more currency to play with. And when I say currency, this is literally how I think about it in my head. So when you start any team dynamic, imagine you start with 3 coins. This is your currency. And every time you make a decision that isn't like a unanimous decision, you have to spend one of these coins. So let's say during the brainstorming process, there's an idea we move forward with. And there was a couple members who were like, it's not my favorite, but okay. While the rest of the team is like, yeah, we love this. And you decide this is the best way forward. Not everyone was on the same page. So you've actually spent one of your currencies here. Maybe later on there's a disagreement about something that impacts the vision of the game. And you have to put your foot down and be like, I'm sorry, like, I understand, I hear you, but we need to go this direction because of your rational reasoning. Again, you always be rational with it. But the person didn't feel listened to in that moment. Again, that happens. But in that moment, you've spent another currency. You only have one left at this point. Okay, you don't want to get to 0 because being at 0 here, I kind of like, that's the metaphor for being like bankrupt. You that's pretty much you using up all of your goodwill and now you might be like coming across as someone who's always like, oh, my way or the highway. So you don't want to get to 0. They got 1 left. Okay, so there's another, let's go back to that background art discussion. That situation happens where there's a decision needs to be made that doesn't impact the final version of the game. You decide to concede. Look at that. You got some more currency. You got more to play with. And this is the key balance. This is a really hard part of the job, but this is what it is. You make decisions that spend currency because people have a certain amount of goodwill towards you and will respect you as a director as long as you're being rational. But they still might be a little like upset that something didn't go their way. So you're spending currency in those moments, but you have to regain currency, regain the goodwill of your team as you concede some decisions as well. And before you know it, you're back at 3, then you're back at 2, and then you're back at 1, and it's a balancing act. And it's a hard part of the job. But the reason why you don't want to get the 0 currency is because you don't want to be an asshole. No one likes an asshole. And that's the worst kind of a director anyone could be. So it's important to be constructive with your feedback. People are going to be coming to you for approvals and feedback on art, music, game feel, etc. Be constructive. Don't just say, I don't like that. Fix it. That's not helpful. Say, I like where this is going. However, I think this aspect of it isn't doing its job the best. Here's why, with a rationale, and here's a recommendation I'll share with you that could solve it. Here's a possible way forward. That's constructive feedback. And when you do this, you're someone who's guiding, not lecturing. Again, people are going to view you in this hierarchical way where you're above them because that's just any group dynamic, how that kind of shapes up. But you don't want to come across that way. You want to be a guider, not a lecturer. You don't want to talk down. You want to help with your rational thinking, guide the team in certain directions. And finally, when there is conflict, because I said there will be conflict, you set the tone. If you're in a position where someone on your team is visibly upset, there's many types of people out there. You might be working with someone who gets super emotional, someone who can't control their emotions. Maybe they're being a bit of an asshole in that moment. Don't go down to their level. Be the adult in the room, like we've talked about. You set the tone of the conflict because 1, it shows that you're level-headed, shows that you're still being rational. It shows the rest of the team that you are capable of having discussions and being reliable in these moments, even when there's high tension. And hopefully it helps calm the other person down. So don't be the asshole, even when someone's being an asshole towards you. Be the adult in the room. But the hardest part of the job is balancing these two things, serving the vision and serving the team. Because when you prioritize just the vision, it hurts the team. Again, we talked about that currency. Let's say you're doing nothing but spending currency. You're not just bankrupt, you're in debt. Well, guess what? The team, they've lost their goodwill towards you. It hurts, it'll hurt their feelings because again, we're still making games together, people. This is supposed to be fun. But if they don't feel listened to ever, morale is down, they don't want to work with you again, it hurts the team. But if you prioritize just the team, it hurts the vision. If you're a people pleaser and every step of the way you want to make sure everyone is 100% happy with everything, and you're making compromises every step of the way, it compromises the vision. Now, compromises aren't always a bad thing. I'm a big believer of compromises, but you need to know when to compromise and when not to. Because if you do too much, the vision doesn't become a vision. It becomes a smorgasbord of just ideas. It's not defined because you've let everyone have, you've said yes to everybody. So that feels great in the moment for the team, but the vision, the game suffers. And this balancing act is the hardest part of the job. And it isn't easy. It will take practice. You will mess up. I've messed up many times because the director, no one teaches you how to be a director. You just got to try. You got to jump in and give it a shot. For those who have already been a director, you probably have experienced this firsthand. For those who haven't but are interested in being a director, this is what you're in for. You're in for some mistakes because there is no guidebook. But the only way to get better is to jump in and try. If you want to be a director, all you got to do is jump in and try, make mistakes, and be open to learning. And as long as you do that, it will get easier. It will get easier. So, in conclusion, a director's job is to be a servant. You want to serve the brainstorm, create the environment that facilitates great ideas because you are not the idea giver, you're the idea facilitator. Support your team throughout the process, even before the brainstorm starts, to set you and your team up for success. Serve the vision. Have that deep understanding of what makes your game great. So when decisions need to happen, you can rationalize why that decision is being made and how it ties back to that vision. It gets your team on the same page as you every step of the way, helps reduce conflict, and helps the game see the best version of itself. And serve the team. Make sure your team is supported every step of the way. Don't look down on them. Be on their level. Support them. Be reliable. Be a servant to these people. These are the people putting the work in. You're putting work in too, but you are a servant to these people. You need to make sure they have everything they need to feel supported, to feel the love, and to do everything to the best of their abilities. As long as you do these three things, you will be a great director. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the presentation. Now let's go for some questions. So Magnarok is asking, if you're also an active developer in the jam, for example, programming, art, or sound, alongside being the director, how do you handle balancing your director duties with dev work? In a small team, having someone only handling director duty is not feasible.
Oh, that's a great question. It definitely makes the job harder. I'll be honest. It's a lot to balance. It's it's not. I don't have an easy answer for you because it's going to be more work. The best way to go about it though is it's as you continue to practice the role of being a director, you start to internalize a lot of these lessons. For example, I've been doing this for many years now, so that balancing act I was talking about of like serving the team and serving the vision, it's become sort of second nature, and it will become second nature for many people as they continue attempting being a director. So as you continue diving in, I mean, I would just say dive into it. It's going to be hard. Like it's not going to be easy to balance being a director as well as balancing other aspects of the game, like programming, etc. Because it will mean that even when you're busy being doing programming, you need to make time for other people. So you will have less sleep, you will have more stress. That is, I mean, that's already part of the job for any director. I barely sleep during jams. I'm always feeling the stress because I'm trying to serve all these people. But the good news is while that's a much harder undertaking you're doing, it's like you're being forged in the fire in that way. You're learning how to balance, like it's a whole other skill set to learn how to balance doing the director role while doing your other responsibilities of being a programmer or whatever you are. But as you dive into it, you will get better at it as long as you are keeping in mind the director responsibilities while you're doing your programming responsibilities and while you hold them in the same level of importance. Because it's really easy to fall into the trap. This is a trap I've fallen into before, by the way. Even my day job, where I'll be like, oh, I can't put effort and energy into this directorial task because I got to do this work. I got to do this. And that in the moment that feels right, but you're in that moment hurting those around you. Not hurting those around you even, but you're shirking responsibilities that could support those around you. And long term, that could have a bad impact. So you need to do both. And again, that's going to be hard. It's doable. It is doable. But you just have to keep in mind that it's going to be harder for you, but it will get easier in time because you will still learn those skills as you try to balance both. As long as you keep both in mind throughout and give them both those responsibilities the same level of respect, you'll be setting yourself up for success. I hope that answers that question.
Thank you. Another one by Magnarok. As a director, how do you make the call when the team members are stuck between choosing an idea that is ambitious but risky and an idea that is safer with lower max return?
Another good question. I mean, that's part of the reason why I'm such a big advocate for setting expectations before the brainstorm. I'll get to what you could do in that situation at the end of a brainstorm in a moment, but I just want to reemphasize before the brainstorm how important it is to set those expectations because maybe there wasn't alignment ahead of time of how ambitious an idea you guys want to do. If maybe it's worth having a discussion ahead of time of hey team, if we stumble on an ambitious idea, how do we feel about going for something that's going to be harder and more ambitious in that if that situation arises? And if you guys had that discussion ahead of time, that means when the actual scenario pops up, you guys already have your game plan. And as the director, you can remind the team, hey, we've already discussed this. Let's go with this. And now, and that, again, that rationalizes your decision. Your rationale is we've already had this discussion. We all agreed on this ahead of time. So let's do that. Now, if that discussion hasn't happened and you are in that situation, I think you would just have to try to figure out which of these two ideas tie back to the success that you guys have talked about previously. And if both ideas are kind of doing the same thing, but just one is just more ambitious, you just need to have a real discussion with the team. At that point, I don't know if it's really about, oh, there's kind of two situations here, I guess. One, have a discussion with the team, open and honest in that moment, and talk about the pros and cons of both ways at it. Talk about how the pros of doing this ambitious idea will mean you guys will, see more people playing your game. Hopefully, more fame coming from it, more glory for this game jam. Talk about how the safer idea will be, easier to do, but you might not see as much success, and that's also fine. Again, it depends on what your objective is as a team. So have that conversation, and then if by the end of the day, after discussion where everyone's heard and there's still like you're split down the middle and you can't decide, you as the director need to make a decision at that point. And there's no right decision. That's the thing. I can't tell you right now, do the ambitious thing or do the non-ambitious one. I know what I would do because like I would do the ambitious one, but that's just because of who I am. That's because of the conversations I have with my team ahead of time, because we're always talking about doing ambitious ideas. So I know I'd be able to rationalize that decision for my team. Like, hey guys, I know this is scary, but like we've discussed, how to approach, like, that we're here to like kick ass, and this is the idea that lets us do that. So let's do it. So that's how I would rationalize it in that moment. But you need to, there's not, I can't give you that answer necessarily because it really has to tie back to your philosophy, your previous discussions with your team, and then you got to make a gut call from there. And there's no right answer. It really just depends on the situation and the team and how it feels in the moment. I'm sorry I can't give you a definitive answer there, but I hope that does help.
Okay, so the next question by Bad Piggy. How often have you and the team you were part of hard pivoted the design of the game that you were working on when you were midway or more through a jam? And if so, how would you go about it?
Often, it hasn't really happened very often. I mean, I do have some people from GMTK Games in the chat, so um, maybe they remember an instance I don't remember. I think the closest we got to it was when we were doing Diminution, and again, it took us 6 hours to come to this idea. We actually had two versions of the idea, and we were kind of split down the middle on which is the best way to approach it. And me and half the team wanted one direction, the other half team wanted another direction, and we actually ended up developing both briefly at the beginning just to see what would feel more fun. And then we decided, okay, this one's feeling the most fun. It might have been an instance of me putting my foot down. I don't remember. Um, but I think that's the closest we got to like a hard pivot. We've definitely hit some like problems halfway through development where we had to kind of pivot some like smaller complementary ideas. Like I think for like Be Switched, for example, it was a very complicated idea where you're able to swap the abilities with different entities in each level. And I think that we had some really ambitious ideas that just never got to make it because we had to do some pivots based off what was possible from a programming perspective. So, or rather, that programming perspective in a shorter period of time. So those were the closest we got to what you're talking about. But I would say from my personal experience, we haven't done a hard pivot. I think part of the reason of that is because when we do crack an amazing idea, I take some time to really craft out the vision. I'll usually make a little document that's like, here's the vision, front to back. Here's why it works. Here's all the complementary ideas that make it succeed. And because everyone at that point has such a deep understanding of the idea, we're all able to get behind it and know it works. So that's thankfully prevented us in the past from being in that situation. Um, I wish I could be more helpful because again, I haven't been in that situation firsthand, but I hope that helps prevent some of those things for the future.
Thank you. Now a quick one by EuroXW. How do I get to join your team?
I mean, look, I'm always looking for more talented devs to work with. All I can say is if you ever want to work together, shoot me a message, shoot me your work. I'll take a look. You know, it's as easy as that. I'm not scary. I'm always down to have a conversation. I can't promise things obviously because we're a pretty packed team and you know, maybe we'll have one person, maybe two people each year that can't join during GMTK, for example, and then we'll look for some replacements. But hey, send me a friend request, and let's keep in touch. And if there's an opening, you never know.
Alright, so the next one by Squishy Turtle. I was recently invited to join a team as the game designer, in quotation marks. The team had art, audio, and programming covered, so I would be owning game design alone. I wasn't a huge fan of being in such an amorphous soft skill role without a way to contribute hard skills. I feel like I was being asked to be the idea guy, so I wasn't a fan. I think a director may be a similar, so my question is, what exactly are you doing at every stage of the jam? Beginning, middle, end. After the idea is mostly figured out and the game idea just needs to be executed, what do you contribute while the programmers and artists are producing their parts?
That's an excellent question because you know that feeling you've described of being in this amorphous soft skill role, and it feels weird, right? I had that feeling every single year. You're not wrong that the director definitely on paper feels the most important at the beginning when you're setting up the brainstorm, when you're setting up the vision. Um, once the vision is outlined, once the director has outlined the vision and like made again, I know I didn't talk about this in my talk, but made a document that's like, here's what it is, and pass it off to the team. That's when the amorphous feeling starts coming in. It starts creeping in. And it's a weird feeling because sometimes there might be a couple of hours where you're not doing anything and you're waiting to hear back from people and you're just sitting there anxious, anxious as hell, being like, okay, I need, but you learn, okay, I need to sit still. I need to wait because consistently throughout the whole jam, I am being asked to rise up and take a look at work, give direction, give feedback, make sure that the bird's eye view of the idea comes together. Because while everyone else is doing their parts, there's only one person who's looking at the game from a bird's eye view and seeing how all the pieces come together, and that's the director. Everyone else might say they're doing the same things, and in some extent they are, but they're also focused on their task at hand. The person who has to have that be up here looking down at the vision and seeing the puzzle pieces and how they fit together. That's a director's role. That does mean there are moments where you are doing nothing and you're waiting, and I hate those moments because that's usually me. I can't even relax in those moments. That's just me anxiously being like, I want an update. Oh no, but no, I don't bother my team too much because I need them to like feel like they could just do their work without me overstepping. But what you're doing in the beginning, middle, and end of the jam is giving feedback. You're observing each step of the process and everyone's individual progress to make sure it's all still aligned together. You're pivoting as things come up because, even as we've already been asked, like what happens when a pivot needs to happen. It's even if it's a smaller pivot, that's on you to help figure that out. And then you're a support system for these people as well. Again, if anything needs to happen, you need to do it no matter what it arises. So again, everything I'm describing here, is it amorphous? Yeah, it's amorphous as hell. And it feels weird. But it is an essential part of the team because you are the fabric that's connecting everything. And you are this bird's eye view that makes sure it all connects and collaborates together. While it's a really weird feeling being in that role, it's something as a director you need to learn to embrace because and I had to do this for my actual job as well, where you have to learn to be a little hands off for a moment to let the team do their thing. So then you could come in and guide after that. It's a hard skill, but it does get easier. I will say my last little answer is that by trade, I am a writer. So I am also doing all the writing for the game. If there is a narrative, if there is any writing, the name of the game, the itch page. So I am actually doing work at the same time. It's not as big of a responsibility as like programming, for example. So most of the time I am in this amorphous space. So I do have to remind myself every year that it's okay to feel weird in that amorphous moment because because when I am needed, the director role is essential.
Okay, thank you. So one from Steven says, curious about how your team landed on the idea of diminution after 6 hours. What was the beginning of the eureka moment, or what did the science look like when you noticed the team was heading towards that final concept?
That's a good question. It's been so long. I need to try to remember. Um, I might forget some of the details, but what I do remember is we were low on energy. We were hitting wall after wall. We were not in love with any of our ideas. And someone, I don't know who, threw out a small nugget that turned into diminution. I don't remember what the nugget was. It might have been like, what if your dice pips or bullets? And from there, it just kind of like turned into this idea. And we were so tired that we weren't even sure if it was a good idea yet. We were like looking back, after I was well rested, I'm like, oh, this is brilliant. This is such a cool idea. But even in that moment, we were like, oh, we're not sure. Like maybe this feels good. It feels promising, blah, blah, blah. I don't even know if we had a eureka moment because we were so exhausted. But we had faith in our gut. We heard a nugget of an idea. It turned into what diminution was, or as I said before, it turned into kind of two different versions of the idea. And we chose to choose our gut, trust our gut in that moment. And maybe that's because each of us have been doing game development for many years at that point, and we've developed a bit of a gut. But weirdly enough, there wasn't a eureka moment. It was really underspoken. We just trusted our gut that this was the right idea. And then later on, the eureka moment happened. We were like, oh yeah, once we were well rested and not exhausted from the brainstorm, we were like, oh yeah, this is a brilliant idea. Good job, gut. Our gut did us well in that moment. Um, so yeah, that's kind of how that came together. I wish I had more details. I wish it was in more recent history. I'd probably remember more, but it feels like so long ago now. That was like 4 years ago, 5 years ago. I don't remember. Um, yeah, I hope that answers that question.
So next one by the Wafi. As a director, you've seen teams of all sizes working together to make a game. What's the ideal size for a team so it's still controllable and easier to keep the essential idea?
Good question. I think it's going to change based off the comfort level of the director. And sorry, not just the comfort level, but just the ideology, even. Like for me personally, I think 6 or 7 is the perfect number for me. That's my opinion from my experience because I've worked. That's about how big Jam do games is every year when we do GMTK, and I think it's perfect because you get a couple people doing helping each other out for specific roles. Like you have 2 programmers, you have 2 artists, you have other people filling the rest of the roles, so it's manageable. But there's still like enough people support. There's enough support systems built into the fabric of the team that there's multiple people supporting each other while you, the director, are helping oversee not too many people. There are people out there that want to do bigger teams. Personally, I think if they get too big, it gets a lot harder. And I don't think you always see a benefit. Now, every year doing these jams, there's always like a team that comes up with like 25 people. And I'm always like dumbfounded of how they do it. Like, good for them. But I would imagine there's a lot more hierarchy. I would imagine there's a lot more structure to the point of like multiple directorial roles, or even if there is one director, there's probably multiple team leads. So I think if you are doing a bigger team, it just means you have to restructure things in a way that set yourself up for success. Because if you keep it one director and everyone else, I think if there's too many people, you're going to struggle. Um, so for me personally, it's 6 or 7, but with time you might realize for your own skill set, not even your own skill set, your own comfort level, you might realize, 4 or 5 is perfect. Maybe that's just more manageable. And there's no shame in that. Again, directors need to put their ego aside. You're not better at your job because you have a bigger team. In fact, some people make that mistake all the time. And it's one of my biggest pet peeves because I don't care how big your team is. I care how good the game is. And I care if your team is having fun doing it. That's the metric of success, not how big of a team you directed. So, as long as you're keeping your ego aside, you can find what that number is for you. Again, for me, 6 or 7 seems like the perfect number of getting enough people working on the job, but enough people to ensure you're not overloading yourself with too many people to oversee.
Thank you. And now we'll have two somewhat related questions. First one is by Kai. How do you transition from a gem game to a potential commercial release later?
Um, that is a very good question. Um, and probably a question I'm not the best equipped to answer because of my unique position where I have a very I have a day job. It's not just a day job. Like I have a career that like I've built over the past 10 years. It takes up a lot of my time. And while I am working on a fuller release of a game right now, over time, as I've gone promoted and my responsibilities at work have gone bigger and bigger, my ability to contribute to those commercial releases has gone less and less. It's kind of that's my particular position. Um, and again, that might be different for different people. So how to best transition from a game jam to I haven't even like got a commercial release out yet, which is fine because I have different metrics for success for myself. But I mean, what I can say is when you are transitioning from a game jam to a potential commercial release, maintain that structure. The all the skills I've talked about today are not just game jam skills. These are the skills of any director. The reason why I know so much about it is because I do have my day job completely outside of game development. So those skill sets are going to come into play just as much when you're transitioning from working on a game jam game to making a commercial release. Again, I'm going to stay humble here. I don't have any commercial releases on my end. So I'm not, there might be some better people to ask than myself. But I hope that does help kind of nudge you in the right direction.
And another related question by Tewafi. How to find people who want to continue jam games to a full commercial release? After about 8 to 9 game jams, I want to make a full game, and so far all the people I found are either too busy or don't want the commitment.
Speaking of being too busy, um, yeah, it's hard. It's hard. Some people have signed up for a game jam. That's all they have time to do. Some people want to make a commercial release. It's really, at the end of the day, it just comes down to the individuals. Um, some people say they're excited and they want to make a jam game become a full release, but they just don't have the time. In reality, that's happened multiple times with me and teams. Um, at the end of the day, it's just about you just need to have those conversations and hope you find like-minded people. If it really is, again, we go back to setting expectations. If one of those set expectations for you really is, I want to make a commercial release coming out of this jam, when you're building your team, have those conversations ahead of time. Talk about, hey, if we love, ask people you're making a team with, hey, if this idea ends up being a great idea, do you have the capacity to make a full game release? Start those conversations early, because if you wait to after the jam, you might set yourself up for disappointment if the people you're working with just aren't aligned. And you can't really fault them because, again, life gets busy. I'm one of those people myself where I have a busy career, so I can't put as much time into it. But again, the earlier you have those conversations, the sooner you set yourself up for success.
All right, so a question from Steph to X. Do we ever overscope? And if yes, how do you recognize that and cut back on the idea?
All the time. It's too easy to overscope. Um, I think how I usually approach it. I've talked a bit about how, and I've talked about this in my previous talk, Finding Clever. You come up with your big idea, and then you come up with all these complementary ideas that support that big idea. And usually, where the overscoping happens is those complementary ideas, because you're trying to come up with all these ways to best support that core mechanic that you've fallen in love with. So usually, what I'll do when I'm coming up with those complementary ideas is I will either in my game design document or at the very least up here, I'll have an understanding of which of those complementary ideas are essential and which aren't essential. Because like for example, I'm gonna go back to Be Switched again, a game where you're able to swap properties between you, the player character, and different elements within each level. We had so many ideas. But as the development process continued, we knew, okay, these three are the most important. These seem the most like most fun and the most synergistic with the idea. And here's another two that if we have time, we should totally do because these seem cool too. We didn't have time for those extra ideas, and that's okay because we knew ahead of time that we knew what was essential, what wasn't. So you're gonna overscope. It's gonna happen. But as long as you have again that bird's eye view, deep understanding of the vision, you could have that deeper understanding of what is essential versus what is a nice to have. As long as you're doing that, you can ensure that you're trim. It helps you trim the fat during a jam. Um, that's how I approach it every year.
Thank you. So Stevensas is asking, you mentioned about having deep understanding of the vision. When do you usually start constructing this? Would it be in the brainstorming stage?
Great question. Yeah, I would say it's right after the brainstorming stage. So I mean, some of it starts during. So usually what happens is, let's say we land an idea. Usually the team gets excited. So you're already discussing, you're already chatting, and I'm already jotting down, ooh, they said something that complements that. Ooh, they said something that complements that. And I'll throw some stuff out in there too. So while the brainstorm is still happening, you already the vision starts forming. It's not done yet though. Once the jam ends, I'll usually take a little bit of time. I'll sit down quietly, like, okay, let me write this out. I write down the vision, I write down the big idea, I write down all those complementary ideas. And as you're doing that, that's when you start realizing what actually connects, what kind of seems like a little extra thing that doesn't quite complement the big idea. Um, and that's when the real magic happens. So I say the beginnings of the defining of the vision, that deep understanding starts happening during the brainstorm. But right after the brainstorm is when you really need to put your head down and really define what this thing is to have that deeper understanding, and then share that with the team as quickly as possible. And that's when the magic really happens, right after the brainstorm. And I would say don't waste too much time. When the brainstorm ends, if it's late, don't care, just do it. Get it on paper, get it out there to the team, make sure it's making sense, make sure it's working. And then while the team starts on things, like for example, the programmer might start on the most basic mechanics, you need to keep refining as you go too. So have you ideally by the time you're done the brainstorm and you do that first step, the vision is kind of crafted. But there, as you keep going, you might realize small tweaks you need to make here and there. So the vision could be malleable as well in very small ways. But ideally, right after the brainstorm, that is when you're doing the bulk of the work.
Thank you. Erin is asking, if you were to host a jam, what would be the most important aspects to you? Any cool themes you would do? Anything you wish that jams would do differently?
Oh, oh god, hosting a jam would be so cool. I think I'd probably approach it very much like how GMTK already does it. I'm a big fan of the way Mark Brown approaches his jams because his jam themes are themes that can be interpreted in many ways, and they are have just enough going for them that you could take it literally, you could take it metaphorically, you could take it all these different ways. And if I did a jam, I would want to do the exact same. My the my the lead my least favorite jam I've ever worked on, the theme was UFO. Great, UFO, that doesn't really inspire, right? It's like, okay, UFO could be, yeah, you could come up with mechanics that only work for a UFO, but UFO could just be the coat of paint you put on something on a game idea as well. So you want, if I did a jam, I want to make sure that the theme has enough going for it that inspires people, but also has enough going for it that it could be open to interpretation. I don't have any examples off the top of my head of any cool themes I would do, but I think I would set myself those benchmarks when brainstorming. Um, and I do think it's a very similar benchmark that Mark Brown has for his themes. Um, in fact, I'm even reading the chat and I see Squishy Turtle says roll the dice strikes again. I mean, that's the example of one theme that Mark Brown did that wasn't so much of a hit. Uh, but for the most part, I think he does an excellent job of coming up with those themes that follows my values too of generous to interpretation, but also inspires a way forward. So that's how I would approach it if I were hosting a jam.
Thank you. Another question from Steven says, directing seems like a hard skill to improve iteratively on. How do you measure whether you are improving or not improving your directing skills on a project by project basis?
Very good question. Wow. I say there's two sides of it. One is you're working with a team of people, right? Ask them. Just because you're a director doesn't mean you're, again, this hierarchy of like director, everyone else, that doesn't really exist. Or okay, sorry, it does exist, but you want to crumble that hierarchy as often as possible. I've had debriefings after jam games with my team where like especially when there was a game where there was a conflict, you've discussed how that conflict went. And again, collaboratively as a team, there wasn't any bad blood. It was just like, okay, this thing happened, let's address it. How do we feel like we as a team under pressure approach this? And what can we do better? And I took some learnings from that because again, I might be a director, but I'm not perfect. I'm going to make mistakes. And so ask your team, hey team, how did I do as director? Do you have any notes for me? And hey, absorb as much as possible, decide which of those pieces of feedback are actually apply and actually feel right to you, and then absorb them. Because again, especially if you're working with this team year after year, they're going to see you grow. They want a good director that guides them. So if they have something to share that will help you, they will happily contribute. So I would say do that, but also you will innately know. And I say that because especially those like very hard things like balancing serving the team, balancing serving the vision, eventually the right answer of how to go about a problem will just come quicker to you. And in those moments, it becomes more obvious about what's working versus about how you're getting better at the job. Because you don't have to sit there and be like, how do I do this? You'll know the answer. Your gut will know the answer because you've been doing it for a few years now. So it's that I guess that's my answer. It's a mixture of that innate feeling of seeing yourself, seeing the gears turning faster and getting to solutions faster, because if your gut is more defined, but also don't be afraid to lean on those around you and ask them for advice and ask them how they felt being directed by you, and hopefully you get some good insights that way.
Thank you. The Wafi is wondering, why be the director over contributing in other roles? For example, I'm an artist. Is there a reason for me to want to be the director over my artist role?
I think some people mistakenly view the director as like the next step. It's not. Really, it's just another role. Um, if you don't want to be a director, don't be a director. There's no shame in that whatsoever. You're not. That's not you stagnating. You just might have a love for being an artist, and then in that case, just be the best goddamn artist you can be. There's no shame in that. The director is not this next step to achieve. It's just another role. Again, it's just a weird thing because again, there is a bit of a hierarchy going on, but that doesn't mean you're climbing a ladder necessarily. You got to love what you do at the end of the day. So there's no reason to be a director if you don't have a love for the role, for the work that comes from it. I'm a director because I love that level of work. It's something I do in my day job too, and I've grown to love it over the years. I love having the bird's eye view. I love crafting the vision. I love ensuring that we're guided towards that vision. I love team dynamics. I have a love for it. So I thrive in it. It's and just like how for an artist, if they have a love in art, they're gonna be an artist. So there's no reason to do it if you don't want to do it. And if you do want to do it or just want to try doing it to see if it does work for you, give it a shot. There's no harm in it. But if you realize it doesn't fulfill you, no need to do it. So why be a director? Do it because you have a love for the game. And if you don't have a love for that particular side of the game, no shame in that. Just do what makes you happy. And in your case, it might be being an artist, or it might be trying to be a director, but it's something you gotta decide for yourself.
Thank you. A question from Tyrex. What was your motivation behind this talk?
Ooh. Um, Well, I actually gave a smaller version of this talk during GMDC, which is for those in the GMTK server. It's like a smaller like moment where like everyone in the server can sign up to give like a 10-minute presentation about a topic. And I was asked if I wanted to contribute, and I was like, oh, sure. Like I already gave a talk a few years ago, Finding Clever, here on the server. I enjoyed it a lot. I'm like, oh, I kind of like sharing what goes on in my head. Like, I wonder if I have anything else to contribute. And I just thought about it. I was like, oh, like director. I that's a really weird role that gets a lot of flack from those people who like again give it a bad name. Those idea people who just want to, with no hard skills. I'm like, oh, I could probably talk about that. And then I just snowballed from there. I got all these ideas. I'm like, oh, like there's so much to talk about what it means to be a director. And I just kind of fell in love with it. So like I think the inspiration, I mean, the inspiration is really just the game dev community and people encouraging others to talk about what is makes them passionate about the industry and what their skill sets are. And because I that's one of my favorite things about game development is the collaborationness of all of it. And when I was asked to think about what I could contribute, I stumbled upon talking about being a director. And then when Kira reached out to me saying, "Hey, do you want to give a talk right before the jam in the post jam production server?" I was like, hell yeah, I already got a talk and I'm gonna make it bigger and better and I'm gonna give it here. So I spent a lot more time putting more effort into the presentation, turn it from a 10-minute thing into like a half-hour thing. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of that story. I just really wanted the as soon I just had to ask myself, is there anything that I could share that would help others? And it dawned on me that the director role is this amorphous role that a lot of people don't understand, and it made me really want to kind of do my best to make it more concrete and get people to understand how a good director role could really impact a jam team or just any kind of team. And I really do hope that the presentation helped achieve that.
So then a question by Shadow, 3D or not 3D? That is the question. I typically only work in 3D for game jams and other projects.
Uh, I have never worked in 3D yet. I'm not against 3D. It just hasn't really come up. I think it's tough. I started doing jams with 48 hours as far as GMTK, and I think in that situation it was very much you don't have to do 2D, but you don't have to do 2D, but it helps to do 2D because it's just a quicker to kind of put together from a programming perspective. It's easier for people to pick up. Um, and so that's how I kind of just learned. I'm very much open to 3D. Um, in fact, I've worked with one of our programmers has brought that up to me before. Like, oh, like would we ever consider a 3D game? And I said, yeah, we would consider it absolutely. I personally have a love for 2D games, but again, it's about putting my ego aside. If the right idea we come up with during a brainstorm is an idea that works best in 3D, you bet your ass we're doing 3D because me for my team, we've discussed that we want to do the best idea possible every step of the way. And if that best idea is 3D, we're going to do it. Um, yeah, so, if you put a gun to my head, I guess if it's 3D or not 3D, I'm gonna say not 3D, but really the answer is whatever makes for the best idea.
Thank you. Steven just mentioned that they've been recently involved in multiple game leading roles without explicitly taking a director role. So the question is, how do you position yourself as a director without making the rest of the team feeling like you are placing yourself above the team?
A team of local friends. Okay, so you all know each other, people you know. It's a very good question, and it's a hard question because, as I said, there is always gonna be this invisible hierarchy that's going on. But the way that I might suggest approaching it is that in reality, director is another role, and it's a skill set. And the point of a game jam, especially, is to practice different skill sets. A lot of people enter jams with that in mind. So I would maybe suggest going to your team, like, hey team, I'm interested in learning a new skill set. I'm interested in learning the skill set of a director and that leadership type of position and helping guide the team and craft the vision. Would you guys mind if I was the director for this next jam so I could practice that skill set? And I think as long as everyone, like, they'll know what that means. They'll know that means creating a bit of a hierarchy. But I think as long as you're honest about why you want to do it, if you're just doing it because you want to boss people around, no one's gonna like that. But if you're going at it because you want to practice this skill set and practice this role and better yourself, and you tell your team that, I think they'll be open to it. And I think that will make them, yeah, I think they'll be down for that. And I think you can even be upfront about the hierarchy and have those discussions ahead of time. Be like, hey, this does create a bit of a hierarchy. I want to be upfront about that. I want you guys to know that I'm going to always approach things rationally, and I'm not here to ever push my thoughts as above yours, but I'll only push directions and thoughts that I think will actually be best for the game. So just because you're a director doesn't mean you have to shroud all those decision making. Be upfront. Be upfront about these are skills you want to work on. Be upfront about your process and how you're always going to be working towards the end goal, the best version of the game. And I think if you talk about those things honestly, they'll be open to that change in dynamic. At least for the first jam, trying it to see how it feels, and then from there you guys can reassess, of course. But yeah, that's how I think I would approach it.
Erin is asking, do you like jam teams that focus on mechanics?
Do I like jam themes that focus on mechanics? Personally, I do. I mean, I've mentioned already that I like jam themes that are open to interpretation, which could be interpreted as like a mechanic versus not a mechanic. So but how I typically tend to think about great ideas is in terms of mechanics. So actually, I guess my answer to you is actually I don't like jam themes that focus on mechanics because I want the jam theme to be open enough that it could take you down the mechanic route, but it could also not. Like built to scale. I think that was last year's. Was that last year? Oh, that was 2 years ago. Built to scale was a GMTK theme a couple years ago, and I think that's a great example because it takes you down multiple paths. Built to scale feels like it's talking about mechanics. Oh, scaling different things, maybe you're changing the size of things. That's a mechanic idea. But also, maybe you're built to scale. Maybe it's about scaling a building, climbing a building. Oh, you're built to maybe a robot who's climbing a building. Oh, you're literally built to scale. That's not a mechanic, but that's like a flavor idea. The actual game mechanics might be completely different. So I do prefer because I know what I like. I like it when it ties back to mechanics, but uh, again, putting my ego aside, jam themes are not about what I like. It's about what's best for everybody, all types of devs. And there are so many great devs that come up with great ideas that are not mechanic based. That's why I really love GMTK a lot because the themes can take you down mechanics, or it could take you down something that's just like a coat of paint for a different type of mechanic. Um, yeah, that's my long-winded answer. But if you put a gun to my head, I choose mechanics just because I love a good mechanic.
Okay, thank you. Claudia says, this question isn't exactly related to directing, but I've been taking part in game jams for the better part of the last 2 years, though mostly solo, but I feel I have not developed confidence for anyone's skill at all, where I can join a team and take up a role. I'm always nervous reaching out to new people to team up with, or even showing progress when I am in one, and overthink too much that I might just drag the project down. How do you guys deal with this if you haven't do, or have you gotten over it?
It's a very good question. I think I think it's important to realize that just because you're joining a team doesn't mean the rest of the team has their shit figured out, you know? Like I feel on I've been doing this a long time. There's moments I feel unconfident, imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome sucks. We all feel it though, And I think that the best way to get over that fear is to try. Join a team. Be honest about, hey, like this is my first time joining a team, and like I can't wait to contribute. I hope I don't let you guys down. And I guarantee there are other people on that team who's thinking the exact same thing as you. You're in good company, ideally. And or if you want to be more confident about that, be upfront about how this is your first time joining a team and that you are a bit nervous about contributing. Maybe I forget what you said that maybe you're a programmer. Uh, Maybe join a team that already has another programmer. So that way it's not all falling on you. And you have some shared responsibility, and that helps alleviate some of the stress there. But I think you'll find that there are other people that feel the same way as you. And if all of those people are coming together to make teams, then you are all there helping support each other, helping prop each other up. And as long as and if there is a director on the team and they are a good director, they're going to help prop you up and they're going to help guide. They're not going to talk down. They're not going to judge. Now, there are bad directors out there. Don't get me wrong. So if that does happen, though, it could happen, but it's not on you in that case. It's on them. They're being a bad director. That's not you being bad at your job. So I would say embrace the fact that other people feel the same way. Give it a shot and maybe join a team that already has a lot of other people on it. So that way you can feel more confident dipping your toes in a way that you could share responsibility with others, in which case that helps alleviate some of that pressure. Um, yeah, I think that's how I would approach it.
Okay, so the question from the Wafi. Do you like gems with more than a theme, like an optional object limitation, or does that just limit more so you hate it?
I've only done one jam that restricted more like that. And it was the jam that had the theme UFO. Uh, which is already a jam, which is already a theme that's like not very good. So it was like UFO was the theme, but then the restriction was it has to be. I think that it had to be like a high score based game. So it was just so restrictive. So I didn't like it, but I've definitely seen other jams out there that have done it well. Like I think it adds a layer of complexity when there's a restriction, but I think depending on what that restriction is, it can help a lot. Creativity. I mean, I'm not going to talk down. We're all creative people here. We're all game developers. But one of my favorite parts about creativity is the aspect that restrictions create new solutions. When there is a restriction, it forces you to think outside the box in new ways that will surprise you. And so I am a fan of restrictions and themes. I just think it's really hard to find a good one that doesn't make it annoying or make you hate it, like you said. So I'm a big fan of it when it's done right. But oh God, is it hard to do? And if the people running the jam don't do it right, I think it's a nightmare. So I'm gonna say yes, I do like it, but there's a big old asterisk next to that because again, if it's not done right, yikes.
Okay, so Eskimo Pie is asking, do you have advice for someone who keeps getting assigned the team leader role but doesn't want it? How do you talk your teammate into taking the role?
It's a good question. I've never been in that position before, so it is a tough one. I've been in situations where multiple people want to be in a director role, but not the opposite. But if it's a role you're not interested in, here's the thing: you wouldn't force someone to be an artist who doesn't want to be an artist. You wouldn't force someone to be a programmer who doesn't want to be a programmer. At the end of the day, a team lead, a director role is another. It's another role. It's a whole other role. It's a whole other skill set, and if it's something you're not interested in, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, and I think you just need to talk to your teammate about it. And maybe the situation isn't about, hey, we need someone who, as a team leader, someone needs to take responsibility and be the director. Maybe it's not that kind of team. Maybe you guys all try to make decisions together no matter what. Now, there are pros and cons to that. Personally, I believe it's always nice to have a team lead. Maybe it's about inviting someone else to the team who could fulfill that role, who has experience doing that role. But it is a difficult position you're in. If you don't want, but at the end of the day, I would say if you don't want the role, if it's just not a skill set or a position that interests you, I'd say you're under no obligation to fulfill that role. So I think it just starts with an upfront conversation with your teammates, and possibly exploring other alternatives, whether it's just a different kind of hierarchy or bringing in another person onto the team to help fulfill it.
Okay, thank you. Shadow is asking, you mentioned not rushing during the brainstorming process. However, game jams have very limited time frames sometimes. So considering GMTK is now a 4-day jam, how long would you say would be the max time a team should spend on this step for a jam like that?
That is a good question. I'm gonna start with I mean, I guess I'll give two answers because here's what my gut is saying. My gut is saying is that there is no such thing as too long because, well, that's my answer for my type of team. Because again, we talked about setting expectations, setting up what defines success, what defines a good idea for you and your team. For my team, we want a breakthrough idea that's never been done before, that will get people talking, and that's hard. And we have a philosophy of you don't spend time trying to polish something that at its core isn't a good idea. I would rather have my team brainstorm for 10 hours, even have a break in the middle and come back to it, than us be like, fuck it, let's go with this mediocre idea. So especially now that you have 4 days, I see people talking in the GMTK server every year where they are still stuck trying to think of an idea after 24 hours. If that happens, maybe that's just the way that it's going that year. That's okay. You will get to a great idea eventually. Now, you're asking, is there a time limit? I mean, obviously, there is only 4 days, so there has to be a time limit. I just don't know what that would be because I would be content taking a full day brainstorming with my team if it came to that. I'm confident that people can come up with great ideas in a day. But I would maybe beyond that. Maybe that's the threshold. Maybe after 24 hours, you go with one of those ideas that you had that are not breakthrough, but like still a good idea. Because I'm sure you got something at that point. But I guess it really again goes back to what you've defined the expectations to be with you and your team ahead of time.
Okay, so a question from Igiminius. Sorry if I butchered that. What, if any, differences would you say there are between taking a project lead role for a short game jam versus taking the role for a project being worked on for months or years?
Oh, and you got the name right. Perfect. Any difference? In terms of the core philosophies behind it, they're very similar. Because I mean, a lot of the things I shared today, all those lessons I didn't even learn from doing it in game development. I learned about it through my job, my day job, which is I work in the advertising industry. And I have a directorial role there as well. And those are the same skills I use in those projects, which are projects that could last a whole year, you know, at the very least, months and months and months at a time. So the foundation of the skills I'm talking about today are definitely the things that you could bring about to all aspects of leadership, and all aspects of being a director, whether it's for a 4-day jam or a year-long project. Because even in those longer projects, the vision is so important. Being able to rationalize why decisions are being made is important, and maintaining that team dynamic is important. In fact, it gets harder the longer you go, because you're already trying to balance like this vision and the team over the span of 4 days. You start trying to balance that over the span of a year. Again, going back to that currency metaphor, your currency, you keep gaining and losing currency nonstop. Um, so the philosophies and the insights and the skills are all the same. It's just a bigger scale.
Okay, thank you. V is asking, my question also is how do we best adapt to sudden changes where the team is suddenly lacking a member, like when a crucial artist drops out during development?
Ooh, no one likes it when that happens. I've been very lucky. I don't think I've ever had a year where someone's dropped out. Or I think actually no, the very my very first year that happened, but we had like 3 artists and we were just down. It was like right away, so it didn't really impact us at the end of the day. But um, how to best adapt? Well, I mean, I think we're all very lucky that the game dev community, specifically the GMTK community, and that extends to communities like in this server, um, are all very welcoming and very helpful with each other. Like I know that some of the devs over in the GMTK community created a whole tool, a team finder tool to help fill in those gaps. And every year I see people saying that they've lost a member and they need someone to fill in. So that tool is a great. I think they always call it like their team finder tool or something like that. That's probably a great tool. Posting in servers is a great thing to do. Uh, I mean, to be honest, like it is a tough decision to be in. I don't think there is an easy way forward, especially once the jam started already and teams are likely already made. But you might get lucky. I'm sure there's a lot of people who are looking for teams last minute. And because, a lot of people are in those same positions that you're talking about. So I would just lean on the community. Go into the GMTK server, come into this server, Post Jam Productions, maybe there's some other ones, but use the tools and talk to people, and hopefully you'll find the right people to fill in those holes. Yeah, it's a shitty position to be put in. So yeah, I apologize if you put in that position in the past.
Thank you. Shadow says, for game jams, I tend to assemble a team of about 5 people to cover all the necessary roles. Programming, design, art, audio, and narrative, with some people having overlapping skills with others. Question: what kind of team is your type of team?
Good question. It's very similar to what you're describing, Shadow. I think I love having, for some roles, multiple people filling the same roles. I'm a big believer of two programmers, especially when, I mean, in a perfect world, they are different time zones. So someone goes to bed, someone's waking up, and they continue programming. It's made things a lot easier in the past. It does come with its own set of challenges because as soon as you start pushing to Git and just merge conflicts, like, oh my God, merge conflicts during a jam is like my worst nightmare. The amount of stress has come just from merge conflicts alone. But I do generally love having two programmers. at least 2 artists. I think we have 3 artists this year, but one of them is like their schedule is a little iffy, so like it's like 2.5 artists. Um, and I think I typically just have one person for audio. Um, and like game design, I think game design is interesting because I feel like part of my philosophy when it comes to building teams is I want everyone to. Oh, Seaweed's in the chat. Yes, Seaweed is our audio master who does music and SFX. Very, very, very talented. Um, but when it comes to design, my philosophy when it comes to building teams is I like everybody to know game design. I'm very like every single person in Jamadoo Games uh, knows their stuff when it comes to game design. Some more than others, but for the most part, everyone's able to contribute on that front. So we don't have a dedicated design role. I guess the closest thing to a dedicated design role would be me, the director, but I would hardly feel comfortable saying I'm like a lead designer. I feel like we all are. So I think like when building a team, it's very similar to yours, except I doubled up on art and programming. Um, and um, I like to make sure everyone on the team has a fundamental understanding of game design. But other than that, I think your way at building your team seems very promising.
Thank you for the response. Bonsix is saying, I guess I have a question. What if you get a lead role of some kind, but at the same time want to create something for the game too? So let's say you want to make music for the game. Should you, first option, let someone else lead and just focus on simply making music for the game? Second option, take a lead role strictly in the music audio direction of the game, making music as well. Or the third option, try to balance directing the game as a whole and making music for it. Obviously applies to art, code, everything else as well.
It's a really good question. It's a really hard question because there's multiple answers. Um, and actually, someone in the last talk asked a very similar question, and it's a toughie because a director, I think I definitely see benefit of having someone be dedicated towards a director role because I think they're able to have that consistent bird's eye view of everything going on, all the puzzle pieces, and putting it all together. However, I don't think that philosophy of mine should ever stop anyone from wanting to do what they love as their hard skill within the team, as well as be a director role. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I kind of do it because I'm a writer by trade. So whenever for every game jam, I'm doing the writing. Now, me balancing writing with directing, I would say is a lot simpler than someone balancing programming and directing. Um, so I would say it depends on if you want to play on hard mode or not. I think if you wanna, it's because they're different skill sets, and the hard part about wanting to, for example, focus on music, but also have like focus on being a director, is that you can't let one make the other one suffer. A big trap that I've fallen for in the past is, and this is like for my actual job, I've been in positions where I'm focused on the work, but I need to do some director stuff. And I'm like, oh, if I gotta finish this work. But now this director stuff is suffering. And that impacts other people because people are relying on the director's vision and relying on that bird's eye view of all the pieces coming together. So it's absolutely possible to do both. It's 100% possible. It just might mean more stress and it just might mean less sleep, to be honest. But again, there's nothing wrong with that. So I don't think there is one correct answer in your list you're giving here. I think it just depends on what you want to focus on. Maybe one year you want to focus on just being director by itself because you want to just really hone in on those skills. Maybe you just want to be the musician that year because that's what your hard skills are and that's what you really want to just do what you do best. If you want to do both, by all means, do both. It'll be more stressful, but there's nothing wrong with that because doing both and balancing both is a skill in and of itself. It's a hard skill to master, being able to do the work while also making time to oversee everything else. But it is absolutely doable. So if you're up for the challenge, I would say try to balance both, but you need to decide for yourself if that is the level of challenge you want to do. And you could also lead into it a bit. You could do 1 year just being a director without doing music to just learn and get better at those skills, and then go into the next year doing both at the same time. That's all another option. Um, it's all possible. It just matters. It just if you do decide to do both at the same time, I just say you gotta you gotta stick with it. You know, halfway through, you can't be like, ah, no, it's too much stress to do both. You signed up for both, and people are relying on you at that point. So, if you've made that decision, which again, it's a decision I support, just know it'll be more stress, and you gotta stick with it. But if you nail it, you'll learn a lot, and it's a lot of great skills to learn from that.